let's go ahead to move to our next module where we will be creating our infrastructure within a Jenkins server. So we were logged out of our Jenkins session. For us to log back into our Jenkins session, we give the username admin and the password admin which we created initially. And once we do that, we can select sign in. Once you click on sign in, we are going to give the pipeline the name Wonder Prep Terraform Pipeline. We'll give the name Wonder Prep Terraform Pipeline, and then we'll select the type as pipeline. Once you select the type as pipeline, previously we're selecting the type Freestyle project, but now we are going to be selecting the type as pipeline. Now when you select the type as pipeline, you can click on OK. When you select OK, we'll give the description. This is the Terraform infra pipeline. Now we give the description. This is a Terraform infra pipeline. Now, contrary to the previous Freestyle project, with this pipeline, we are going to see that the look is different, and we are going to be using the pipeline script. Previously we did a build step, but now we are going to be using the pipeline script. Now for the pipeline script, we are going to begin by creating a sample pipeline. So I'll click here, I'll select this tribe sample pipeline. You can have a pipeline for it's just a sample pipeline. You can have a hello world pipeline that automatically creates a Jenkins pipeline for you by default. You can equally have the GitHub plus Maven pipeline. This is some basic GitHub plus Maven pipeline, and then you can equally have a scripted pipeline. This is another example of a scripted pipeline. So we are going to be beginning, or we'll begin basically by using this hello world pipeline. So you click on hello world, and this will create a simple pipeline. Remember, if you go to the official Jenkins documentation, you can type Jenkins pipeline to see default Jenkins pipeline. Once you type Jenkins pipeline and you click on pipeline on Jenkins, it will take you to this page where you can see a Jenkins pipeline. What is a Jenkins pipeline? You see basically what a Jenkins pipeline is, how to create a Jenkins pipeline, why a pipeline, and then you can come right below here. You see an example of a pipeline. So this is an example of a Jenkins declarative pipeline. You have the pipeline, you have the agent, the stages, the stage, and then the steps and the command. So the most important thing you must take note of is the pipeline, and then you take note of the various stages. You take note of the stage for an individual stage. You take note of the steps, and then the command which you are executing, which is the commands which you put within the steps. Now you also want to take note that Jenkins pipelines are written in Groovy. Jenkins pipelines are written in the language called Groovy. So every Jenkins pipeline, declarative pipeline, is written in Groovy. Now with this Jenkins declarative pipeline written in Groovy, let's come back to our Jenkins pipeline. So I'll come back here. If you see the pipeline, we are on the Wonder Prep Terraform pipeline, and the sample name is hello. So once you click here, you have this hello world, which is a default pipeline. With the default hello world pipeline, all you need to do is to click on save. So we'll click on save, and now when we save, we can perform a build. So we click on build now. Remember, this is the pipeline. We have the pipeline name, the description. This is the Terraform infra pipeline. To see all builds, you see the builds right here. We've not done any build, that's why you do not have any build occurring or existing. If you want to configure this pipeline, you can click on configure here, and you give you the option to configure this pipeline. It still takes you back to this step, so you save it, and then you have the possibility to build now. If you click on build now, it should build the pipeline. So if you see the build in progress, it will tell you if the pipeline succeeded by success or if it failed by failure. So we see here our pipeline is successful. We have the success. We click on the drop down here, and then we can click on console output. So when we click on console output, you see basically it executed the commands within the pipeline. How can you know the commands within the pipeline? If you see, the basic command within the pipeline was the echo hello world command. If you come back to the pipeline, you click on Wonder Prep Terraform pipeline, you click on configure, you will see here we had the stages, we had the stage, and then we had the steps, and the basic command we had was the echo hello world. So you always want to take note of this when writing your Jenkins file. Now in addition, you must take note that for every curly brace you open with Groovy, you must have a corresponding closing curly brace. So our pipeline curly brace, this is a pipeline curly brace, and then this is the closing curly brace for our pipeline. For our stages, this is the opening curly brace, this is the closing curly brace. For our stage, for an individual stage, this is the opening curly brace, and then this is the closing curly brace. And the same thing for steps, this is the steps, the opening curly brace, and then this is the closing curly brace. Now with this given infrastructure, we can modify this to meet our infrastructural requirements. Now, what is the infrastructure requirement we have? We want to be able to take this code which we have here, our Wanda Prep Terraform infra repo code, this code which is our main.terraform, provider.terraform, and variable.terraform, which we created in our previous module. We want to automatically clone this code from our GitHub into our Jenkins server. So this step is to clone this code from our GitHub into our Jenkins server. For us to do that, because we have no idea on how that is being performed, you click on pipeline syntax. So I'll right click here and I'll open this in a new tab. Once you open this in a new tab, you will have pipeline syntax. Now, what does the pipeline syntax help you to do? The pipeline snippet generator will help you learn the pipeline script code, which can be used for different steps. Remember, these are the steps. All the commands you put are within the steps. So if you want to know each command or which command to put within these steps, you come to the pipeline syntax. And for you to do that, you can right click here and you come to pipeline syntax. So these are the various steps. There are different steps which you can do as far as Jenkins is concerned. You can have steps for archiving artifacts. You can have steps for build a job, steps for email. You can have steps for Git, steps for, so as many plugins are available on Jenkins, you can have the respective steps. But now, the step which we are actually interested in now, based on our requirement, is a step for us to clone our code from our GitHub into our Jenkins server. So for us to do that, we select Git, and when we select Git, we must put a repository URL. Which repository are you trying to clone from GitHub into your Jenkins server? And the repository we are trying to clone, we come back to our DevOps with Mike. This is the repository, Wanda Prep Terraform infra repo, which we created. Now we click on this code, we copy the repository. So you see copied, you copy the repository, you see copied here. Once you see copied, you come back to your pipeline syntax. While you're in your pipeline syntax, you want to paste the repository link here. Now, once you paste the repository link, you will now be required to specify the branch. Which branch is the Jenkins server going to clone from? If you come back to our GitHub, you see our repository, all the content is currently in the main branch. If your setup created your project code base in a master branch, you can use a master branch or whatever branch which was used when you created the repository. In this case, our default branch is the main branch. So in our pipeline syntax, the branch in which we are working will be our main branch. Now, when you select the main branch, the next thing which Jenkins requires is the credentials. What kind of credentials or what credentials will Jenkins use to access your GitHub repository? Jenkins needs authorization or authentication to be able to access your respective GitHub repository. So for Jenkins to do that, you need to add a credential. And for us to do that, we click on add. We select Jenkins. Now, because to log into GitHub, you need a username and a password, we are going to remain with this username with password. This is the credential which you need to be able to log into your GitHub account. So for us to do that, we just input our GitHub username. So I'll be inputting my GitHub username. I'll come back to my GitHub here. If you don't know your username, you can search here. This is your username, your GitHub username. So I'll use the DevOps Mike-01 for my username. I'll come to my pipeline syntax. I'll put the username DevOps Mike-01. This is my GitHub username. Now the next thing which is of importance is the password. So I'll put the password of my GitHub account. So this is some information which is secret to me. So I'll put my password, and then now for the ID, you can call it git credential. The same for the description, you can call it git-credential. So this is a credential which you want to use to log into your respective GitHub account. So once you have your username with password, you've put your Git username and you've put the respective password, and you have the credential. Now you click on add. This now will create a credential. You will see here credential created. Once the credential is created, still in this pipeline syntax generator, we'll click on credentials here, and then you will select the respective right credential. So you select this. Now, if your credential is good, or if your credentials are the right credentials which you use to create your GitHub account, when you click on generate pipeline script, it should give you a pipeline script using the Git credential which you added. If you do not use the right credential, it will not be able to access your account. Therefore, you won't be able to get the necessary script. So since our credential is okay, the script has been generated. So once we have the script generated, we'll copy the script. So I'll highlight all of these, right click, and you click on copy. Once I copy that, I'll come back to my hello world pipeline or my hello pipeline. Below this echo command, I'll hit enter, and then I'll paste the command which I copied. So let me undo that. Immediately after the hello world, I'll put my cursor, I'll hit enter, I'll right click, and I'll paste the command. So this is the command git branch main credential and then the Git URL. You want to use your own repository URL. If you use my repository URL, you'll not be able to push or do configuration changes in my repository. Once you set up this URL, the next thing which you need to do is for you to edit some of these details. So we are going to call this stage name git checkout. So this means we are trying to download all the code from our GitHub into our Jenkins server. So we can give a better print message. You can say cloning code base from GitHub to Jenkins. So this is what this stage is doing. This stage is basically cloning code base from GitHub to Jenkins. Now we want to be able to see all the files that are within this repository, and for us to see all the files that are within this repository, we need to run the command ls. For us to run the command ls, we do not know how to run the command in our Jenkins. So for us to do the command, we still come back to our pipeline syntax. We click on git, and because ls is a shell script, we'll select shell script. So we select shell script because we want to run the command ls. Now if I select shell script to run the command ls, I'll put the command ls here. Once you put the command ls and you click on generate pipeline script, it will give you the exact command which you are to put within your steps. So you put the command we want to do ls, and then ls will give us the exact command which we'll put within our steps. So once ls gives us this command, I'll right click on this, I'll copy, I'll come back to my WonderPrep pipeline, and below this git branch which is on line 9, I'll hit enter, and then I'll paste this ls command. So I'll right click and I'll paste the command. So my new pipeline script should have 3 steps: the echo, which is the first command, the git branch, which is the second command, and then the ls to show the content of the repository. So these are the basic steps which you need to implement or which you need to run the first time. So this is what the Jenkins pipeline will look like on the first glance. Now once you have this set up on the first glance, you now click on save. So you can save your pipeline. Once you save the pipeline, you will now be able to perform a build. For us to perform the build, you click on build now. Now when you click on build now, you will see the build was a success. For you to verify the commands that were executed, you see come here, you right click or you click on the drop down, you select console output. Now when you select console output, the first command which we had was the echo command, and the echo command was executed to run the command which is specified, which was the cloning code base from GitHub. Then the second command we had was for us to do a git clone, which was specified by the command we got from our pipeline syntax, which is the git command. So the last command which we had in our step was the ls command, and the ls command was to list the files. So we have the readme.md, main.terraform, provider.terraform, and the variables.terraform. This corresponds to the same files that are in our GitHub. We have our .gitignore, which of course is a file which we use to discard some unnecessary Terraform files. So within this, we have our main.terraform, provider.terraform, and variable.terraform. So coming back here, once your build is successful, you should see your readme.md, your main.terraform, your provider.terraform, and your variables.terraform. So coming back to your pipeline, if you click on pipeline here, you will see that you have been able to run 2 builds. The first build was just for us to do the sample pipeline, and then the second build is for us to run the command to do a git clone. So if you click again on configure just to verify, if you click on configure, you will see we had 3 commands. The first command was the echo cloning code base from GitHub to Jenkins. The second command was the git branch command, and the last command was the sh command. So this is the basic step, or this is the basic stage through which we can use to copy code from our GitHub repository into our Jenkins server. Now in our next module, we are going to be configuring Terraform to be able to do the Terraform commands on our code. Remember, the code which we have cloned has a main.terraform, provider.terraform, and variables.terraform. So in our next module, we'll see how to run the Terraform configuration commands to deploy that infrastructure within our Jenkins pipeline. So to end this, you can save here, and then we move to our next module.